afternoon and welcome to Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. This is on the Carter Malone Network. My guest today is Memphis Shelby County Crime Commission President Bill Gibbons. Bill is a former Memphis City Councilman, Shelby County Commissioner, District Attorney, Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security. You've had a whole lot of jobs, Bill.
Sounds like I can't keep a job.
No, you've had plenty.
No.
Welcome to Dialogue with Deidre.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Let's talk a little bit about the Crime Commission.
Sure.
What is the mission of the Crime Commission?
It's very simple, and it's been around since 1996, by the way. 1996, is maybe we can recall, was a really bad year in Memphis in terms of violent crime, and there was a lot of hand-wringing about what to do. Willie Harrington was city mayor at the time, and he got with the business community and decided one thing that needed to be done was to create an autonomous, independent entity to identify best practices to reduce and prevent crime, and to urge implementation of those best practices. So that basically is why the Crime Commission was created. That's its mission, to identify those best practices and to advocate implementation of those best practices. And it's not part of government, and that's intentional because we want to be able to advocate best practices, and if the appropriate public stakeholder, for example, is not doing what he or she needs to do, we need to say that.
Be able to freely say that.
Yeah. And so not be dependent on government funding or anything like that. So that's basically why the Crime Commission exists. Beginning in 2006, it was formed in 1996. 2006 was another bad year in terms of violent crime in Memphis.
Okay.
And I was in the process of moving my son into his dorm. It's a Sunday afternoon, and I got a kind of a frantic call from then County Mayor Wharton.
Okay.
And he said, I can't go to the grocery store or to the drugstore without someone approaching me saying, what are you going to do about this crime problem? So we need to meet. And I said, well, I'm out of town right now, but I'll be back tomorrow. When can we meet? And he said, tomorrow. And I asked if I could bring then Sheriff Luttrell with me. And he said, sure. So the three of us sat down, and it took us about 5 minutes to agree that we needed a plan and then needed to work the plan. And that the Crime Commission was the obvious neutral party to kind of pull everybody together behind a common plan. And that's how the Safe Community Plan idea originated, again, made up of best practices. And we are still at it in terms of a Safe Community Plan. We're going to be developing a new one, or spearheading development of a new one this year. But that's kind of a background on the Crime Commission and what we do.
So 2 follow-up questions, and then we'll get to the survey. The Crime Commission does have a board that you work with, right?
Very good point, and I should have mentioned that. Yes, we have a 50-member board.
Wow.
It's kind of like herding cats or squirrels.
I was going to say, how can you get anything done?
But amazingly, with just a few exceptions, we have been able to develop a consensus on things. And it's 25 members of the public sector.
Okay.
Some of the obvious, the mayors,
The
police chief,
sheriff.
the sheriff,
Yeah.
the DA, the U.S. attorney, and so on. And then 25 private sector members, some representatives of the business community, the faith community, the nonprofit community, and so on.
And then my final question before we get into the survey is, when you mentioned best practices, is that from across the country? Are you looking at best practices? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
And, some of them are things that we've been doing here in Memphis for some time, but we also look at what other cities have been doing and the impact of various steps that they have taken.
Bill, when you think about comparable cities to Memphis, what would you say from a crime perspective might be comparable?
From a crime perspective?
Yeah.
I would say St. Louis, New Orleans, and Detroit would be at the very top.
Okay. So let's get into this new survey. The Crime Commission does this survey. Is it every 2 years, Bill? 3 years?
Well, it's
2 to
supposed
3?
to be every 2 years.
Years, okay.
Now, having said that, we skipped a year in there due to the pandemic.
Okay.
So we kind of waited on that, but we started doing this in 2020 to really get a feel for how the public felt about various parts of the crime issue. And again, we started in 2020, and the survey this year was our 4th survey.
Okay, and we work closely with, and I say we because I'm a consultant. The firm Carter Malone is a consultant with the Crime Commission on this survey with public opinion strategies. And registered voters, 400 people were surveyed.
Right. And we need to talk about this later, but I kind of raised the question with the polling firm as to whether registered voters was really the appropriate sample.
It should be random.
Because it's really undercounting our Hispanic community, for example.
Right.
So I don't know what the answer is to that, but it's something we need to look at moving forward.
And we'll look at it in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Make sure we look at it in the next 2 years. And so with that, though, 61% of the respondents were from Memphis, 39% of the respondents, parts of the county outside of Memphis. And from the city of Memphis perspective, 61% of the respondents were African American, 35% were white. For the entire county, 47% were African American and 48% were white. So what were the major concerns, Bill, coming out of this survey this year?
Well, it's kind of interesting because it's a little different from previous surveys that we've done. First of all, crime and public safety remains the number one concern.
Yeah.
And within that, gun violence in particular is the crime concern. And there's not any other issue that even gets close to gun violence. Having said that, there has been a little bit of a change, or not a little bit of a change, a significant change. Among African American respondents, jobs in the economy is now number one, with crime being number two. That's a switch from previous surveys.
And Bill, I'm wondering, what is that attributed to? Do you think it's because African Americans are seeing more police in their communities, or maybe not, or just maybe it's a need for jobs and opportunities from an economic development standpoint?
I really think it's the impact of the economic problems that we're having. We are a very poor city. We have a lot of low-income families, and a majority, but not all, a majority of those low-income families are African American.
Right.
So they are feeling the brunt, really, of our economic problems.
Right.
The term affordability is used a lot. I think that's a good summary of what a lot of people are facing.
And you mentioned gun violence. I mean, that's a primary concern. Do you think it's because the laws have changed at the state level? Because now I'm someone who has a permit. My oldest son and I went
Good for you.
together, and we got that permit together, and we went to the shooting range together. Let me just say, my oldest son, my score was better than his. I love saying that when we have this discussion. He's here in the studio, so I love saying that.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, do you think that's attributed to?
I think that is a factor, and I'm glad you have a permit. But of course, you no longer have to have a permit.
Exactly.
So I think we're in a situation where people say, well, why do I need to bother to even get a permit and pay the permit fee and so on? And I think that was a mistake by our state legislature to allow open or concealed carry without any training or any background check whatsoever. So I do think that is one factor that has contributed to people's concerns. Yes.
Bill, when Chief Davis was announced that she was going to be the new police chief, I interviewed her to introduce her to the city, and that law had just gone into effect.
I remember, yes.
And I asked her that question, Bill.
In fact, her predecessor, Director Rollins, and I went to the legislature to testify against the legislation.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we didn't change a single vote.
Right. Well, at least you tried. Let's transition to, there's a 2-to-1 margin with this survey that respondents feel that the Memphis Safety Task Force has been a success in our area. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, yes. And I like the way you put that because, if you look at the crime trends, yes, the crime trends have improved even more since the Memphis Safe Task Force has been in place. Crime was already going down, and I think that's important to note.
It is
really
important.
beginning last year, so we were doing some things right, best practices, if you will. But the increased presence of state and federal law enforcement, I think, has helped kind of drive that down a little bit more, which is a good thing, and I think the survey results reflect that. We didn't ask this, but I think, and I'm speculating here a little bit,
Okay.
but I think in terms of what people like about the Memphis Safe Task Force, I'll mention two things. Number one, they like the increased presence of state troopers.
Oh, I see them everywhere.
And I think most people appreciate that. It's kind of interesting. You and I have talked about this. If you go back 2 years or so, we had all these fake drive-out tags on various cars. Yes. They've almost disappeared.
They have.
And that's because the presence of state troopers is serving as a deterrent, and people realize, I better go get some real legitimate tags or I'm going to get pulled over.
Exactly.
So it's having a positive impact, I think. Number two, our state troopers and the U.S. Marshal Service in particular have helped the Sheriff's Office and the Memphis Police Department serve outstanding felony arrest warrants.
The numbers were so high.
We were up to around 20,000 outstanding arrest warrants. Individuals who have been charged with a crime but have not been picked up. And I think that the fact that the U.S. Marshal Service has brought in more resources has really helped on that, to chip away at that backlog. And, of course, there are exceptions, and I don't mean to kind of include everybody in this, but I think it's safe to say that a lot of individuals with outstanding felony arrest warrants are probably out committing more crimes before they've been picked up.
Yes.
So I think that's having a positive impact on the crime rate as well. So those, I think, are good things that the public supports. On the other hand, there's an exception to that, which you're probably going to get into next. So I'll just let you go right ahead.
So I want to say, if we want to talk about the numbers, 62% surveyed feel that the Memphis Safety Task Force has been effective. 30% feel like the task force has not been effective. 47% would like to see more current state troopers remain, and 29% even want more in the area.
Yep.
So let's just talk about the 58% that have been surveyed feel like the recent crackdown on undocumented immigrants has not made the community safer, and 42% feel like it has made the community safer. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of an exception to the general feeling that the Memphis Safe Task Force has been beneficial. The exception is really the crackdown on undocumented immigrants. And a majority of the survey, 58%, I believe.
Yes,
right?
58.
Feel that crackdown on undocumented immigrants has not made our community safer. It's not really a factor. And the stats bear that out. The Tennessee District Attorney's Conference did a survey recently of all state charges statewide, hundreds of thousands of state charges. And what they found was that only 3% of those state charges involved undocumented immigrants. And the vast majority of that 3% involved traffic violations. Only 10% of that 3%, which equates to 0.3%, less than 1%, involved charges for violent crimes.
Okay.
And most of those involved domestic violence. So in terms of street violence, carjackings, robberies, and so on, our undocumented immigrants are just not a factor. I have actually talked to a lot of law enforcement folks about this, and maybe you have too. And what every one of them has told me is that our undocumented immigrants are more apt to be victims
Yes.
of violent crime rather than perpetrators.
What I've heard.
For an obvious reason.
Yes.
Because if a perpetrator feels that an undocumented immigrant is less likely to report a crime, that means they're going to get away with it.
They're going to rob them. They're
Right.
going to attack them. Absolutely. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Something you said about domestic violence, I thought it was, I was talking to Chief Davis once, like right around the holidays. And I said, I hope you have a great, I don't know if it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. She said, oh, no, that's when we're busy. Because,
True.
Is that true, Bill? Because she said,
It is
because
true.
when you're around the table with your family, a lot of things happen. So I thought that was so interesting. I had never heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to the survey. So, you know, in previous surveys, respondents expressed dissatisfaction with the local criminal justice system, right? Across all subgroups, a wide majority of respondents believe the DA's office is too lenient. So 62% feel the DA's office is too lenient. 80% say the state court system is too slow. Compared to previous surveys, faith in the system's support for victims has plummeted, with just 16% believing victims receive a lot or some support. Were you shocked by these numbers?
Yeah. Well, a little bit.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of disenchantment with the system.
Yes.
In effect. An exception to that, which I assume we'll get to in a minute, is the local police out on the streets, which people feel overall they're doing a pretty good job. But there's a lot of disenchantment with the system, really across the board. You mentioned 3 areas of it: the DA's office, the courts, victim services. There's a lot of frustration about the bail system, a feeling that the system is not doing a good enough job to rehabilitate those who have been incarcerated but are returning to the community and creating job opportunities for those individuals. And there's a lot of disenchantment about the sharing of crime data locally. The police department does a pretty good job, but the court systems, the caseload data is really kind of spotty. So there's a lot of disenchantment there. So I was a little surprised at the depth of it, but I'm not totally surprised.
So people feel like MPD's doing a pretty good job.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, it kind of hit a low point in the 2024 survey for a couple of obvious reasons. Number one, we had the very tragic Tyree Nichols incident in 2023.
That's right.
And I think that was reflected in the 2024 survey and kind of a low point in terms of people's feelings about the local police. Also, it was right after the COVID pandemic, and the police will be the first to admit to you that during the pandemic, for obvious reasons, they were not being very proactive.
Right.
I mean, they didn't want to get COVID.
Exactly.
So the 2024 survey was kind of the low point in terms of people's feelings about the local police, but it's kind of rebounded since then.
We've got about 5 minutes left, Bill, and so I thought it was interesting. One of the last questions we had was about projects,
Yes.
potential projects coming
Yes.
before the city. Regional One Health, the new hospital potentially, a new jail, and then education opportunities, right? So were you shocked by the survey results?
A little bit. Well, first of all, there's very strong support for constructing a new jail. I think 77%.
Yeah, 77%. That's correct.
Which is really pretty incredible. And it received top priority among all respondents in terms of those three construction areas that you mentioned. Now, interestingly, among African American respondents, construction of new jails was number one. I'm sorry, construction of new schools was number one, with the new jail being number two. But kind of across the board, really, a new Regional One came in third, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. So what do you think the biggest takeaway from the survey was in your opinion? And how are you going to use this?
Good question. A couple of takeaways, not just one, but crime continues to be of major concern
Absolutely.
to the entire community. There's a lot of concern about the criminal justice system generally, but pretty good feelings now about local police. Generally a good feeling about the impact of the Memphis Safe Task Force, but an exception being the crackdown on undocumented immigrants.
Yeah.
And strong support for constructing a new jail.
Yeah.
So those are more than one takeaway, but
no, those are good. Those are good. And
so we are going to be spearheading development of a new 5-year safe community plan this year. We'll be having community forums and so on. But one thing we're going to use will be the results of this survey. And I don't want to, I'll predict some of the things that ought to be in the plan. Although it's not my decision, it is the 50-member board's decision about what's ultimately going to be in the plan. But I think it's safe to say there are going to be parts of the plan that continue to address the gun violence problem.
Yes.
Continued support for increasing the number of police officers. There was very strong support for that.
Yes.
Tackling the problem of truancy, which the survey indicated was
87%.
Yeah.
It's a serious problem. Yeah.
And doing something about the jail.
Okay.
And of course, it's a very expensive proposition to build a new jail. I personally think it needs to be done, but if the money's not there to do that, then you've got to have some fairly extensive renovations of the current jail. It's got to be one or the other.
Right.
So those are some of the things that I would anticipate being in the new plan.
So, Bill, if someone wants to keep up with what the Crime Commission is doing, they can just go to the website, right? MemphisCrime.org.
Absolutely. And by the way, the full report on this survey is on the website, so MemphisCrime.org.
Bill Gibbons, you can come back on Dialogue with Deidre anytime if you have any projects
or
anything going on. Please come on back. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us for Dialogue with Deidre. We look forward to seeing you next week.